This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Agony of parents in Nigeria's Katsina State as they wait for news of their kidnapped school children. Brexit talks continue amid pessimism on the possibility of a deal. We bring you the latest from Brussels. And the UN apologizes to Ethiopia for breach of security checkpoints in Tigray region. Hello and thank you for joining us on Africa Live. I am Peninah Karibe. Also coming up tonight, Egypt's national Courier says it is capable and ready to transport coronavirus vaccines across the region. And in sports, Verstappen victorious as Formula One season concludes in Abu Dhabi. We begin in Nigeria. Protests rocked Katsina State as residents demanded the release of school children abducted from a school on Friday. The governor of Katsina has confirmed that 333 children are still unaccounted for after gunmen raided the government science secondary school on Friday night. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has condemned the incident, which has brought back memories of a similar incident in Chibok in Borno State in 2014.
Parents of students at Government Science Secondary School in Katsina State in Nigeria are in shock.
Sincerely speaking, we here in Katsina State are in a terrifying condition. We don't see the value of the government. In fact, I have a younger brother and a child taken along by the kidnappers.
A child is a child regardless of his parent. Children were kidnapped and we didn't sleep throughout the night. And we were just hearing gunshots. Some of my relatives' children were also taken.
In a statement, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari said the military had located and exchanged fire with the gang that kidnapped school students. But residents are calling for stronger intervention from the government. The state of Katsina, home to President Buhari, has been plagued by violence. The government attributes it to gangs of outlaws who attack locals and kidnap for ransom. The kidnapping has brought back memories of what happened back in 2014. Boko Haram militant group kidnapped over 200 girls from a school in Chibok. Dozens were rescued or managed to escape, but some are yet to return home. Chamhono, CGTN.
Let's get more now from CGTN's Phil. He has his live for us in Abuja. Phil, what's the latest on this kidnapping?
Oh, thank you. So far, what we know is that Katsina State has been rocked by a series of protests by many people, especially parents, and this time women of the children who were kidnapped, who are yet unaccounted for in the government science school in Kankara, Katsina State. Lots of them are carrying placards insisting that the government must speak as to the whereabouts of these children, and also that they demand answers, that they do not want a repeat of an event that of course occurred several years back. So that's on one end. On the other end, the governor has confirmed that so far out of 839 students, 333 are still unaccounted for. He says that some of them have been, running into the police security operatives from the forest, where many of them took heels to. He's also said that they're trying to contact the parents of those children who are unaccounted for to see if they've received calls or if they've gotten some of the children back to the rescue. But of course, the president has condemned the attack. There's also been a visit by the security operatives led by the National Security Advisor Babagana Munguno to the governor and of course the school. So we're hoping that this exercise will be done and dusted with. The children will be found and rescued back to their homes.
Phil, we had a similar incident back in 2014 where the Chibok girls were abducted. Are there any measures in the pipeline to protect such institutions from gangs and terror groups in Nigeria?
Well, in terms of what plans are in place, we do not have the exact details of what the security operatives talking about, the military, the Air Force, the DSS and all of those apparatus. We do not know exactly how they plan to get these children back. What we know is that they say their hands are on deck, and this is going to be a very, very quick mission, because they want to ensure that this doesn't go in the line of what happened in 2014, talking about the Chibok girls. So they've the National Security Advisor has tasked all the sister agencies, to ensure that they do their best to bring back this children. If you look at on social media already, there are lots of calls. People are already trending on social media talking about bring back our boys, because most of them are boys in this case. But we're hoping that really this is not a semblance. This is not, because so far we haven't gotten who is responsible for this attack. So we're hoping that this is not an insurgent abduction. We're hoping that if there are bandits, they will still be within the state and they can be cordoned off, and the children can be found and rescued back to their homes.
All right, Phil, thank you for that update. Phil has alive in Abuja. Meanwhile, in Ethiopia, the United Nations has apologized on behalf of its staffers for breaching security checkpoints in the Tigray region. During the incident, they were shot at after authorities said they broke through 2 inspection blocks. The workers have since been released after being held in the town of Shire. Last month, a deal was signed by the UN and the Ethiopian government to facilitate the coordination of humanitarian access to the region. This is as a military confrontation ensued between the army and forces from the TPLF, forcing thousands to flee to neighboring Sudan. Now, earlier we spoke to CGTN correspondent Girim Chala, who gave us an update from Addis Ababa on the latest developments.
The United Nations has offered its formal apology for the Ethiopian authorities for the behavior of some of the aid workers operating in the northern part of the country. And we have heard that the authorities here have accepted that apology and urged for no repeat of the same action. This, by the way, is after last Sunday, some aid workers from the United Nations have breached at least 2 checkpoints, and they've been shot at on a third one, and they were later detained and also were released. The Ethiopian government after that said that this is a sovereign country, and any humanitarian activity that is going to be undertaken in this country must be governed by the rule of the land, and no entity, including the United Nations, can act on its own. The Redwan Hussein, who is the spokesperson of the state of emergency, also said that the action of the UN aid workers is unacceptable and must not be repeated in this country again. Now, on the other hand, Peninah, today, the Tigray regional state, by and large, remains to be calm. The activity of war has subsided long time ago, but the federal police said that it is still hunting for the TPLF leadership to bring them into justice. On the other hand, the first batch of international aid has arrived in Tigray regional state's capital, Mekelle, and the International Committee of Red Cross has delivered medical supplies and others to help people who are vulnerable, who are affected by the ongoing war 3 weeks ago. And this will continue according to the government, and the government is also supplying the much needed humanitarian assistance for the people affected by this war.
On to Somalia now, where Al-Shabaab has lost scores of fighters in a recent U.S. aerial attack south of Mogadishu. The 2 drones targeted explosive makers in Jilib, a key militant stronghold in southern Somalia. CGTN's Abdulaziz Bilo has more from Mogadishu.
In a rare move, the U.S. Africa Command, one of several unified combatant commands of the United States military, has released a drone footage showing the impact of 2 airstrikes last week in southern Somalia. U.S. Army says these strikes in Jilib killed 8 explosive experts known to play a role in producing improvised explosives for the militant group with the intent to cause massive civilian casualties. The agricultural town in the Middle Juba region has for years remained critical to the group's operations. It serves as a training base for jihadists and foreign fighters, with top commanders believed to hide in that area. Thursday's aerial strikes are the first since Washington announced plans to pull out U.S. troops from the country. More than 700 American personnel are operating in Somalia, assisting Somali forces and the African Union troops in the fight against insurgent groups. These elite troops are from Danab, mentored by the U.S. government in counter-terrorism operations. In recent months, they've dislodged Al-Shabaab from a string of towns and villages in the Lower Shabelle region, the epicenter of the conflict in southern Somalia. The pullout by US forces is now expected to impact their operations. Somali officials have warned against any hasty pullout, insisting that the army is not yet ready to go it alone.
The Somali National Army forces must be fully capable, equipped, and critically enabled in order to meet the requirement for a successful transition. To realize this objective, the Somali security forces must have the necessary lethal weapon and effective non-lethal equipment to clear and hold a strategic location.
Since 2017, American drones have increased their targets against Al-Shabaab's leadership and fighters, allowing Somali forces and AMISOM to make significant inroads into key Al-Shabaab strongholds. The military campaign backed by US aerial firepower has denied Al-Shabaab the ability to mount major attacks across the country. And in the run-up to the presidential vote next year, Mogadishu has been urged to increase its campaign against the Al-Qaeda offshoot. In recent weeks, the group has stepped up its campaigns to disrupt the crucial vote with roadside bombs, targeting security officials, and suicide attacks in public gatherings. The attacks are believed to be part of the group's efforts to disrupt the electoral process. Abdul Aziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Let's turn to the latest on the Brexit talks that have been ongoing in Brussels, and the key words from there are going the extra mile. This is after the European Commission and the British Prime Minister agreed to let talks continue beyond the Sunday deadline.
There was no hiding the exhaustion in the British team as they set off for the Sunday round after a punishing previous day. Back home, they know the government is keeping the conversation as positive as it can in the face of widespread no-deal gloom.
I think if you look at what I said at the start of the week, it's pretty similar to what I'm saying now, which is that never say never, because EU negotiations can often drag and drift.
And more frustration on sticking points like fishing now being expressed on the European side.
Well, I just don't understand why we cannot agree to agree on fishing. Fishing in the UK is 6,000 vessels employing 12,000 workers in the UK. That's the size of the magnitude of the problem.
But in the UK, as signs of industry chaos start to appear, businesses are getting angry with what they see as a lack of preparation.
There are a number of areas where we don't have any detail at all, such as we don't understand anything around quota tariffs or quotas. We don't understand anything in detail about rules of origin. We don't have tariff codes. We don't know the detail of the Northern Ireland Protocol.
All too early, the UK negotiators were leaving the European Commission, a sign of failure or success. Clarification came moments later from the EC president.
I had a constructive and useful phone call with Prime Minister Boris Johnson. We discussed the major unsolved topics. Our negotiation teams have been working day and night over the recent days, and despite the exhaustion after almost 1 year of negotiations, and despite the fact that deadlines have been missed over and over, we both think that it is responsible at this point in time to go the extra mile.
Boris Johnson quickly concurred, but clearly is still keen to get some one-to-one time with other European leaders.
I'm afraid we're still very far apart on some key things, but where there's life, there's hope. We're going to keep talking to see what we can do. The UK certainly won't be walking away from the talks. I think people would expect us to go the extra mile. I repeated my offer, which is, if it's necessary to talk to other capitals, and I'm very happy to do that.
Old partners vying for divorce and fearful of the consequences. The only agreement on the most precious commodity. A bit more time. Talks continue in Brussels. Andrew Wilson, CGTN.
Let's link up with CGTN's Tony Waterman, joining us live from Brussels for more on this. Tony, they say they want to go the extra mile. So what is the latest from the Brexit talks?
Well, as you heard there, the UK and the EU deciding that they're going to stick it out. They're going to keep talking. They had set this Sunday deadline to make a decision on what to do, but ultimately maintaining the status quo now that we are 2.5 weeks away from the end of the transition period. Both sides, as you mentioned, saying they want to go the extra mile, but the reality is that neither side wants to be seen as the one pulling the plug on what is a very important trade negotiation. A no-deal outcome will have significant economic ramifications at a time when both countries are struggling with their post-pandemic recovery. So neither side wanting to make that final decision. But as these talks continue over the coming days, contingency plans are being ramped up. The European Commission last week set out their Plan B, which was very narrow in scope and mostly just covered for a 6-month period the continuation of transport by air and by road, essentially to keep goods and people moving across borders. This is something that the UK is going to have to agree to for there to be reciprocity, but that would be an extension of sorts because it would give a reprieve to traders, at least for the short term. The UK, the Prime Minister also today reiterating that Britons need to be prepared for a no-deal outcome and saying that an Australian-style agreement is now the most likely outcome. An Australian-style agreement is code for no agreement at all because there is no free trade agreement between the EU and Australia. So both sides continuing talks, but also making preparations so that if a no deal is the final outcome, that they are as prepared as they can be.
Tony, what are the biggest outstanding issues at this point that are causing pessimism about the possibility of a deal?
Well, as you just heard from Andrew there, I mean, these negotiators have been putting in grueling hours for weeks now, really trying to push through 3 main issues, and they've managed to whittle it down to one big issue, and that is the level playing field. Europe is very concerned that there is going to be divergences when it comes to standards around the environment and around labor, and that is going to create unfair competition in the market, particularly for UK businesses, that they're going to have this unfair advantage because they're going to have weaker standards that they're going to have to adhere to, weaker than what EU standards would be, and for EU companies. So that is one of the big issues, and what they want to do to be able to re-level the playing field is essentially impose tariffs, and the UK sees this as just a way of keeping them aligned with EU regulations. So this is the biggest hurdle that needs to be cleared. There could be a compromise in the form of an independent arbitrator who would decide if there have been breaches or if there is unfair competition in the market, and then what should be done to re-level the playing field, but both sides not willing to take that leap quite yet. The other big issue is around fisheries, access to UK fishing waters. This was a main issue when it came to Brexit itself 4 years ago, about reclaiming sovereignty, reclaiming control over its own waters. But from the EU's perspective, you have fishermen here that have been fishing in UK waters for decades, at times centuries. So there is precedent there, and they want some sort of assurance going forward that they're going to be able to maintain big access for a long time. The last issue is around governance. So how is this deal going to be policed? But it's really about the level playing field. This is an issue that impacts all 27 countries. They don't want to see the single market undermined. The fishing issue is really one that affects the coastal regions, and there's just fewer of them, and ultimately it's going to be this fair competition that's going to be the make or break on this deal.
All right, Tony, we appreciate that. Thank you very much for talking to us. Tony Waterman live in Brussels, and this is Africa Live. We're taking a short break. Don't go far. We'll be right back.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Adventure Tunis, Cairo,
Syria,
Juba,
Johannesburg,
Ethiopia,
Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Egypt's national carrier, Egyptair, says it is ready to transport doses of the anticipated coronavirus vaccine to Egypt and any other destinations. The company's fleet will be supported by 3 Boeing 777 aircrafts that will help transport the vaccine. Most of the vaccines on the horizon need to be kept at very low temperatures. Yasser Hakim looks at whether Egypt has the capabilities to transport the vaccines in or out of the country.
The transport of vaccines seems to be nearly as complicated as creating the vaccine itself.
Talking about the most challenging vaccine, it's Pfizer vaccine, because it has to be kept under 70 degrees, below 70 degrees Celsius, in order to have the airlines and the aircrafts equipped with deep freezers to keep the vaccines below minus 70 degrees Celsius. And once it reaches to the country has 10 days to transport it from the airport to the dispensing facilities. The storage of the Sinopharm vaccine and actually most of the Chinese vaccines can be stored in a temperature between 2 to 8 degrees Celsius, which is actually similar to all the vaccines we currently have in our region. So the transportation, the dispensing and storage is much easier, especially for the developing countries.
Egypt's national air carrier has announced it is ready to transport the vaccines and has dedicated 3 Boeing 777 cargo planes. It's also preparing more planes from its passenger fleet based on demand.
The passenger planes can be used to transport vaccines because they have the ability to carry products that weigh up to 20 tons. The 50,000 doses received from China via Emirates Airways this week prove that we have the relevant machinery to move vaccines from the plane to equipped storage facilities to store the vaccines until it's distributed to hospitals.
Of the accredited vaccines in the market, at least 2 need to be stocked in extremely cold temperatures. Experts say this requires capabilities available in only a few countries.
Our air carrier, Egypt Air Holding Company, has a very important license called CEIV. The certificate is accredited by IATA. The certificate proves we have the ability to properly transport and store medicine and vaccines. We have 6,000 meters of warehouse that are ready to receive vaccines at a temperature of minus 20 degrees Celsius, which is suitable for the Chinese vaccine. But there are talks to study the possibility of upgrading the warehouses to store Pfizer vaccines.
Cairo has been negotiating with China and Russia to produce their vaccines in Egypt as well, and distributed throughout Africa.
We have the capabilities in terms of human capabilities and knowledge. We have the latest knowledge in terms of manufacturing and in terms of the technology itself and how to manufacture the vaccine. This will be transferred from the manufacturers of the vaccine themselves.
And with Egypt Air able to transport the locally manufactured vaccines to its neighbors, Egypt can become a hub for vaccines in North and East Africa. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Coming up in sports.